welcome to episode 157 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast, the objects to observe in the October 2021 night sky. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up the night sky, and this podcast is anyone else who likes going under the stars. How are things looking for your October observing, Shane?
Looking good. We got an email from Eric again. Eric is from Calgary, so he's about, what is that? I don't know, 700 kilometers away from us.
Something like
and,
that.
Sort of in the middle is, Grasslands National Park. It might be a little bit further for Eric, but we're loosely talking about meeting up there for Canadian Thanksgiving and doing some observing. So I don't know about you, Chris, but if the weather is good, I think I'm going to make the trip.
Good.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about running down for a night or two, depending on how cold it's going to get. Kind of depends on that at this time of year, and the weather is a bit variable. But if I can do it, and looks like we're going to have the skies, I'll go. If not, I will be eating turkey at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sounds good. That's pretty exciting. So, I was up this morning and I was looking at Orion. The moon was up, but Orion was there, and the moon is still pretty bright, especially from a dark site. It's almost a week past full. I guess it's about 6 days past full, and but from out here, it's dark enough that basically everything is lit up. It looks almost like daytime here, with that much 3/4 moon even. But you can see the Orion Nebula like naked eye, like just barely, and the Sword of Orion, and probably getting down to maybe like 5th magnitude right now. But I didn't bother observing because I was having trouble sleeping, and with that moon up, I just didn't feel like going up and like super waking up to observe. When I probably need to get a little bit of sleep for the week I have ahead. But looks like we've got some good stuff coming up in October.
Yeah, we do. It's I think it's going to be a good month, and we'll talk a little bit about comets probably towards the end, but there's going to be a comet watch starting here as we get into the winter season, and kind of excited for that too.
Yeah. So in our sort of outline that we put out every year, we did it last year, so I'm going to say every year now. We've done it every year we've been doing the podcast. We talked about the best event probably being Mercury is going to make its best morning apparition for the northern hemisphere, and Venus will be good in the evening for southern hemisphere observers. Venus is pretty low. Like, I've been watching it, but it's too low, I think, to observe well.
Yeah, I agree. It's too low, and the atmosphere will kind of mess things up. And if you have any hope of seeing some of the cloud detail on Venus, you need it as high in the sky as possible and pretty good conditions in order to see any of that.
Yeah, and Jupiter is going to have some double shadow transits, and those can be fun to watch through small telescopes. I know you've seen quite a few of those, as have I. Those are pretty fun to try to observe. Yeah,
those are wonderful, and those can be a bit of a test of the seeing as well. And a night with good seeing conditions, the shadow that those little Galilean moons cast is just like a real sharp, like blot of ink. It's pretty cool to see. And I've said it many times, I just like watching solar system movement. I think it's really cool to see that, and to watch, that black shadow dot kind of, move across Jupiter over the period of the evening is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus, and Neptune are all going to pair with the moon at some point during the month and be well placed. And also, like all those gas giants and ice giants they're going to be well visible. Sort of last chance to get some good views of Saturn and Jupiter while they're high up, and then good opportunities to find Uranus and Neptune. I think they're going to be well placed for telescopic observations. So good chance to hunt those down.
Right on.
So October 1st, coming up, you reminded me, and I was like, whoa, that's right. The 1st is Friday. So we've got to put out this episode. I nearly forgot, but we have we have all the notes for these. We create all the notes for the stuff to observe in the run of the year ahead of time, and I'll be doing that again here over the next few months around Christmas. I'll take my Christmas break and produce this as well. My plan there is to actually produce much of the work for the observer's calendar during that period of time. And I know that there was discussion on having a meeting about the observer's calendar. I know some people think it should be electronic. Maybe we should have an electronic version, and then others were adamant to continue selling the physical calendars. I'm pretty open to whatever people have for suggestions. I think there's some interesting opportunities there. I think the one thing though is that we're a bit slow with the observer's calendar every year and this is the calendar I'm going to be editor of with the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, but it can be a little bit slow to hit the newsstands and to hit the online marketplaces. Like I think it's sold at Sky and Telescope and a bunch of other online retailers. But one of the challenges we have is combining some of the stuff that's in the Observer's Handbook. So we have the Observer's Handbook, and it gets put out every autumn. And I'm also a contributing editor for that, or contributing writer. I'm not really an editor. I'm not an editor at all for that. I just write a couple sections. But that book contains some of the same information, and we have to wait on that information to put in that book. But we're also waiting for that information to go into the calendar as well. And my thinking is that we actually just leave the information that's well suited for the handbook in the handbook, and then maybe we put other information in the calendar so that we can actually get it out a little bit sooner. So that's my plan. That's my other plan for the fall.
Sounds well. I'm excited to see the output.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But on October 1st, we have the Zodiacal Light. It becomes visible in the eastern morning sky once the moon leaves the scene here over the next week or so. And what the Zodiacal Light is, it's kind of interesting actually. Dave Chapman was on a couple months ago talking about this. It's some interplanetary or maybe planetary dust now is a good way to describe it, being that some of this material seems to be, or maybe much of it seems to be coming from Mars. And it's visible during autumn mornings in that eastern sky. It kind of looks like a pyramid. It sort of doesn't really look like Milky Way, but it doesn't really quite look like light pollution either. It's sort of like this faint pillar of light that you can see in the plane of the solar system, kind of in that path of the planets in the ecliptic, where the planets tend to hang out. So I can't remember. I can't remember if I've seen it in the morning sky as much. I've seen an evening sky in the spring quite a bit. Have you ever seen it in the morning sky?
Ooh, no, I don't think so. And part of that is just I rarely observe at that time of the day, so I'm usually sleeping. Yeah. But definitely seen it quite a few times in the evening. But just as you're mentioning this, I was thinking it's been a while since I've even seen it in the evening, so I might make an attempt to observe it this fall.
Yeah, I haven't. I can't recall. I feel like I haven't seen it either in the morning, but I do get up and observe in the morning quite a bit. But usually I'm tired, or I'm pretty focused on whatever I'm going after, whether it's I'm going out to a dark site and doing some deep sky observing, or doing some planetary observing or whatever. So usually I'm pretty focused, and if it's planets, sometimes I'm getting up just as the sky is brightening anyway. So I'm not gonna notice something like the Zodiacal Light, or I'm in the city. Often I'm in the city doing my early morning observations, and then that's not going to work well for seeing this. October 6th though, coming up, that's just like the week. That's just like the week after this week. That's just like next week.
Yeah, it's really close. Yeah.
So that's new moon, and of course that's around that time is going to be the best time to start deep sky observing again. Actually, I've run this. It looks like Tuesday night, and it's going to be really hot here Tuesday. So I don't know what our seeing or other conditions will be like, but Tuesday is when we get pretty much like a couple hours of dark sky, which make it worthwhile to kind of go out and try some dark sky observing if one wants to travel to a dark sky site. I remember one of our Observer's Handbook editors Rajiv Gupta, a number of years ago. This is a long time ago, actually. He was the editor of the Observer's Handbook when I became an RESC member. When I became a full member, I was attending events for years, but then I eventually became a member of the organization. And that's our big astronomy organization in Canada. And he was doing a talk at the Halifax Center where I was a member. And he had this rule that you have to get more observing in than you spend driving. Otherwise, it feels like a lot of effort.
I like that.
I like that rule. I thought that was a pretty smart rule. So if you're gonna spend, a couple hours driving, then you got to spend a couple hours observing. So that's why I always think it's important. Like if the site is like around 45 minutes or so, anyway, it's got to be under an hour, because oftentimes your sessions will be, by the time you set up and observe, sometimes it can be hard to do more than a couple hours in a night. So, here I am right now recording this. I'm about 45 minutes from home. And I like to think that if I'm setting up and observing, I'm usually not going to do much less than about an hour and a half. So that's one of the reasons why I want to find a place sort of within that range from the city. And plus, once you get more than about 45 minutes from the city, here where we live, it is pretty dang dark.
Yeah, like it, we're fortunate in that regard. Our province is quite large, but the density of population is not, and a lot of the people live in two cities. So when you get not too far out of our city, you're really in a lot of rural area, and there's we're fortunate. We have a lot of access to some close dark skies.
Yep. October 9th. Venus and the moon, that's our first pairing for the month. So it's going to be a great month because we've got dark skies. It starts out pretty much by the first, we get a lot of dark sky. So you can observe 3 or 4 hours. And even once the moon rises, there's not much moon by the first. And then on the 9th, we just have a thin sliver. And that's going to pair with Venus. And it's in sort of that one of those front claws of Scorpius, sort of the remainder claw. There used to be 2 claws, and one of them turned into Libra, I think. But anyway, Venus and the moon are going to be right in that area of the sky and are going to make a beautiful pair in really small, low power wide field telescopes like you and I have, or parabinoculars. Any parabinoculars pretty much will be able to grab Venus and the moon together because they're only going to be 3 degrees apart.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that one. I'm just trying to see what day of the week that was, but I'm not able to figure that out as fast as I need to make it sensible in the podcast. All right. So October 12th, Jupiter is going to have some shadow transits of Ganymede and Io, and it's going to be visible this time from North America. It's going to be in progress at sunset for us, Shane, but we can actually see this one. I think we had a pile earlier in the year, but unfortunately, when they were happening, they weren't really visible for us, were they? I think I recall that correctly.
Yeah, I think you're right. So hopefully we have some clear skies. The other nice thing about these shadow transits is you don't need the dark sky. Like this is something you can do from the backyard, and it's a pretty neat thing to see, and it's easily accessible.
Yeah, because I think by the 12th, we're getting close to first quarter. In fact, the first quarter is going to be on the 13th. So as we get the moon in the sky, it's either going to be pairing with planets, or there's going to be cool stuff going on with the planets. And most of the planets are visible. So it's going to be a really great month for doing astronomy. My astronomy course, actually, the course that I teach, kicks up on this Wednesday, and it's going to run for 8 weeks. So unfortunately, I think our COVID cases are too high here right now. I think probably can't be getting people together for doing sessions, which I'd hope to, but should be able to point people to lots of interesting stuff. So first quarter moon on the 13th, and then over the next couple nights, as that moon gets really too bright to do any deep sky observing, going to be more difficult to observe galaxies and nebula and clusters. But on the 14th and 15th, it's going to pair with Saturn and then Jupiter, and it's going to be about 4 degrees from some areas. Although from here, I think think it's a little bit further than 4 degrees. Looks like it's closer to like 6 degrees for each of those planet, Jupiter and Saturn moon pairings. So 7 degrees, that's possible in a pair of pretty wide field, low power binoculars.
Oh yeah. Quite a few will reach that. Even I have some older Russian 7x50s that provide a 7-degree field. I think that's quite common.
Yeah, so that should be possible. It's neat to see the planets when they pair up with the moon like that in the evening sky. Should be pretty cool. And this sort of dance between Jupiter, Saturn, and the moon have been kind of playing out here for the past really almost like the past couple of years now, because Jupiter and Saturn just have been close to each other in the sky. In fact, we had that great super conjunction, or whatever it was called, back last December, but they still remain sort of in more or less the same constellations, sort of like in Capricornus and Aquarius, but they're only still about maybe 25 or 30 degrees apart or something like that. So they're not in the same field of view in any optics, but once one comes up, typically once one is up and good enough to observe, the other one's going to be up too. But they're gradually moving further and further apart. But every month we seem to be getting these nights back to back where the moon pairs up with one and then the other. So it's sort of been kind of a neat thing to see, and we're going to get that for a few more months, and then they'll get far enough apart that these will be nights and nights apart at that point.
Yeah, very cool.
So the 18th, we have another set of transits going on Jupiter. Can see those black disks. So what is a shadow transit on Jupiter? This time it's gaining in Io and visible again here, and very similar to the event on the 12th. But what is a shadow transit on Jupiter, Shane?
Well, so there's a number of different transits that we would potentially talk about as things to observe. And basically what a transit means is you will get to witness something in the solar system typically pass another object. And, one of the more famous ones, I think, was probably the transit of Venus. And what that was Venus moved across the face of the sun that was observable from Earth. And that's a pretty rare event. It only happens twice every 111 years. Shadow transits on Jupiter are just the 4 Galilean moons, can be any number of them. What is happening is they cast their shadow on the disk of the moon, on the disk of Jupiter, and then you can watch that shadow transit across the face of Jupiter. Now, these happen all the time. These are not nearly as rare as when Venus would transit the sun, but I think that there's at least a couple of these opportunities every month that we talk about when Jupiter is in the sky and observable, where you can see this phenomena, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. One thing when we are talking about night sky events is if it is something that's rare, we're going to really highlight that. Otherwise, if we're just talking about it, it's probably a neat thing to see, something fun to see. Usually in these stuff to observe in the night sky episodes, most of the stuff is going to be reasonably doable in either naked eye binoculars or small telescopes. But most of the stuff isn't that rare unless we highlight it, such as the October 20th full moon is not a rare event.
It's just a bright moon.
It's just a bright moon, and we say that because it seems like more and more they're making a big do about these supermoons and different things like that. And honestly, I don't know if I can see those supermoons or not as far as any difference goes. I sketched the moon one year. Naked eye sketched all the full moons. A friend of mine sketched it in Ontario. I was out here, and I don't think we definitively could say whether or not we could detect if it was brighter, because the actual brightness and how much brighter it can be is more dependent on your atmospheric clarity. So nights that are a little bit more humid and maybe have some slight haze, the moon is going to appear less bright. And then if it's super clear, it's going to appear, much brighter. So yeah, anyway, so that's kind of the full moon business. But on the 21st, there's the Orionid meteor shower. But of course, that full moon having been just the night before, is going to probably blot out most of those meteors. But it's actually worth observing that night, not the Orion meteor showers. It's worth going out to observe on October 21st, because that just past full moon is going to be only 1.3 degrees south of Uranus for some observers. I think for us, it's about 2.5 or 3 degrees away. But Uranus is the seventh planet out. It's not that bright. It hangs out around 5.5 or 6 magnitude. So you need a pair of binoculars to see it. But with the moon so close to it, it gives you a really good opportunity to hunt down Uranus without having to use like your software or look up some star charts on the internet or anything like that. You can just sort of put October 21st on your calendar, go out that night, find the moon, and then just above and to the right or to the northwest is going to be Venus. And like I said, for some people, it's going to be really close. For us, it'll be a few degrees away, but you'd be able to see that in your binoculars without really needing much in the way of star charts or anything, because about a 6th magnitude star, 5.5 magnitude star isn't really that faint. You will need binoculars to see it, but it should be possible to pinpoint Uranus on that night, whether you use binoculars or you could hunt it down and then observe it in a telescope, which is a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and if you have especially like a little bit more aperture, like Phil's new 8-inch Dobsonian will really show your Uranus quite nicely, and you potentially could see some of the color there. You're not going to really see any surface detail. The goal really is to resolve it as a disk and not a star. And again, if you can, you might be able to tease some color out of that as well.
Yeah, no, good point. A lot of people have 8-inch reflectors. That's pretty common astronomical equipment amongst amateur astronomers. Some people listening to this, they can look up what an 8-inch Dobsonian is, and that is pretty much one of our top recommendations for people getting going, because they're really good, relatively inexpensive, and easy to use. And those are kind of the three things you want to tick when you're getting into amateur astronomy. And I think that and as well, even though I think Phil's been doing this for a couple of years now or whatever, he's kind of bought this telescope, and I think it's a good choice for just about anybody to have, regardless of your other gear. I think an 8-inch Dobsonian is sort of really one of the workhorses of amateur astronomy.
Totally, yeah, it's a wonderful telescope.
So then on the 25th, we have Mercury at greatest elongation west. That means it's visible in the morning sky. I always say it because you see greatest elongation west, and you think, oh, the west, if something's in the west, like a planet is in the west, you're looking at it in the evening sky. But greatest elongation west just means, which side of the sun it's on. But that means it's going to be visible in the morning sky. So I say basically October 25th, that's where Mercury is going to be best visible in the morning sky, or around that date, sort of for a few days around. But Mercury stays pretty close to the horizon, and that's about the best view we're going to have of it. I think it's about 10 or 12 degrees up for us. So that's still pretty close to the horizon. Your fist at arm's length is about 10 degrees. And if you hold that out, and you sort of, take a look at your horizon, like the true horizon out from flat, a lot of the time you're going to have houses, trees, or other stuff in the way. So you might have to find a pretty good horizon somewhere to try to hunt it down on the 25th. But as a Mercury observer, I will be try to observe all of these. And I'll definitely be set up and trying to make the observations on that week of the 25th. Usually I get one night where I know where it is and I can't see it, one night where I can see it, or one morning where I can see it, and then usually I get 1 out of 3 of the mornings where I can be good observation. On the 26th, we have another set of shadow transits on Jupiter. This one is not easily visible from North America, though, so people will be able to see it from other parts of the world. I did put in where it is visible, so if you are somewhere else, this one is going to be for you. So we do have listeners in Japan and England and some other countries, And so look that one up. That one might be for you folks. I think in the past set, other areas were favored. This time we seem to have more favorable shadow transits for North America. October 28th is the last quarter moon, and on the 29th we have Venus at greatest elongation east. So that means it's visible in the evening sky in the west, and it's not well placed here. It's really good for the southern hemisphere, but not well placed here. And that's sort of it for our planet and moon pairings and sort of a little bit of amateur astronomy mixed in. I don't know if you have anything else to add for the October set of those objects before we move on to comets.
Yeah, I think let's move on to comets. There's a couple of exciting ones to talk about.
Yeah, go for it. You know more about these ones than I do, I think.
Well, one of them I've been sort of tracking, but the first one is 8P Tuttle, and it's going to be 8th magnitude, and it looks like probably about 8th magnitude for the whole month.
Yeah.
I don't see that on Yoshida's chart here.
It was listed in his weekly information on bright comets. And if you go under there and then click it, it's actually cutting through. Let's see, which constellation is it cutting through in September? It's going to be way over in Hydra. So that's going to be, fairly difficult to see. Probably the southern hemisphere is going to be favored for that one for sure, because it's going to be probably getting pretty low on our horizon in the morning sky at that time of year. If it was in Hydra and it was in the spring, of course we'd be able to see it, but right now, yeah, it's going to be like a morning sky object, I think, if you're further south than we are.
Right. At 8th magnitude, though, like that's becoming a binocular target, so some potential there, which is kind of exciting. But the one that I referenced at the start of the podcast is Comet. It's C 2021 A1 Leonard. This one is kind of captured or has the interest of the amateur astronomy community since early on in the year here. So this comet is right now. So again, we always say this with comets, the magnitude estimates are best guesses, and there's a lot of variability in how bright these comets get. And sometimes they get, as bright as predicted, sometimes brighter, and sometimes nowhere near as bright. But this comet, A1 Leonard, is expected to hit magnitude 4 by December. And I think stay quite bright for the month. And magnitude 4, that's a naked eye comet, which is extreme. I shouldn't say extremely rare, but they don't happen that often. We just had Neowise last year, was it last year or the year before now?
Last year, yeah.
Yeah. That one became a naked eye comet. It was beautiful. It was unexpected, and it was really fun to observe. So really starting kind of in October, Leonard is going to start brightening. And I think in October, it's still going to be pretty dim. Actually, no, it looks like it's going to hit magnitude 11 in October. So, that's telescopic range. So really just starting to mention it now. We'll talk about it more in November and certainly in December. But the neat thing with some of these comets is to try to observe them as they get brighter and brighter and brighter, and just record your observations as to more detail that you're able to see. How dense is the nucleus? Are you able to see any aspect of a tail? Right now, probably my guess would be visually observing A1 Leonard. It's probably going to look like an out of focus star or like a little bit of a fuzzy point. You're likely not going to see a heck of a lot of detail, but again, you just never know. So it would be an interesting thing to observe through October. And Chris, I think it's going to be. I'm just taking a look at where it'll be.
7th magnitude, I think, in November. That's where you're going.
Yeah. By November, it becomes potentially a binocular target. So yeah, it'll be exciting to watch this.
And I think some of the time it's in the morning sky and some of the time it's in the evening sky. So you kind of got to look it up on the charts. We spent a long time fiddling around with them because right now it's not circumpolar, but it's up in the northern part of the sky. And then when we start to get into November, it comes down into kind of those lags of Ursa Major. And I think it's visible at this. I think at the beginning of probably when we'll be able to see it, it's going to be an evening sky object, but then it quickly transitions to like a morning sky, just because the sky kind of rotates around a bit. You might get it in the evening sky, but then just because of the nature of its position, it does the way it's tracking and the way the sky rotates, sort of like a futsy one to kind of see where it is. But again, yeah, we'll be updating that as we get into November and October, and kind of watching too to see if maybe it has an outburst, because it is up in Ursa Major, well placed for northern hemispheric observers right now.
Yeah. And, I always try to contain my excitement for a potentially bright comet, because more often than not, I'm disappointed. The comet breaks up as it, gets too close to the sun, and then it just doesn't reach the expected magnitude. But it's hard not to be excited about a potential naked eye comet. So I've been looking forward to this all year, and I'll try to observe it this month if I can, and get a few observations in along the way to December.
Get your hopes up.
Yep. There you go.
As Homer Simpson would say. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, well that sounds good. Lots of stuff to look at. Lots of planets, maybe a bright comet on the horizon, and lots of moon and planet pairings. And hopefully, like that first week or so, everybody will be out under dark skies looking at nebulous star clusters and galaxies. Yeah. Anything else to add to this, Shane?
No, that's everything.
All right. With that, we will thank everybody for listening, and clear skies.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.